We are starting with the chapter Transport in Plants, which comes under the Plant Physiology unit. And I'm going to discuss the topics of passive transport, active transport, diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and porins, osmosis, water potential, absorption in plants, transpiration, pressure flow, mass flow hypothesis. And what are the things transported in plants? Water, mineral nutrients, organic nutrients, plant growth regulators, food which is synthesized in the leaves. That is the transport. What are the substances which are transported in the plants are the mainly water, mineral nutrients which are absorbed from the root, and the food which is synthesized in the leaves. These are all transported in the plants. And this transport includes two types of distances, that is short distances and long distances. For short distance, the transport takes place by diffusion and cytoplasmic streaming. For the long distance, it takes place by the vascular tissues like xylem and phloem, which is known as the translocation. The translocation of water is done by the xylem, and the translocation of food is done by the phloem. Coming to the means of transport, there are two types of transports, passive transport and the active transport. Here, in passive transport, no ATP is consumed or no energy expenditure takes place. But in active transport, energy expenditure is must and ATP is required. Substances move from regions of higher concentration to the regions of lower concentration in case of passive transport. But in active transport can take place even against the concentration gradient. And in passive transport, not sensitive to factors like temperature, inhibitors, etc. That means in passive transport, it is not affected by the temperature increase or decrease. But in case of active transport, it is very sensitive to temperatures as well as inhibitors. That means here sometimes the proteins, when they are carrying the substances, they are very sensitive to the temperature. If the temperatures rises, the proteins get denatured and the enzyme activity also gets inhibited. And in the passive transport, we can see the types of passive transport are diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. And in case of active transport, there are some membrane like proteins. There are some proteins in the membranes called pumps, and these proteins can transport substances from the low concentration to the higher concentration, which is called as the Euphil transport. Again, you see here that you are two types of transport, which passive transport does not require ATP, but in active transport energy is must, that is ATP is required. And here in the passive transport, the substances move from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration, and active transport can take place even at even against the concentration gradient, that is even if it is higher concentration also it can move. And here, and it is not sensitive to the temperatures or inhibitors, but here in active transport it is very sensitive to the temperature and as well as the inhibitors. And here the passive transport are diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. And for active transport, there are some proteins called as pumps, and these can transport the substances even from lower concentration to the higher concentration. And this type of transport is called as the Euphil transport. Next, coming to the process diffusion. Diffusion, the transport of solute particles from the region of higher concentration to the lower concentration till it reaches equilibrium. What is diffusion means? It is also the passing of the substances. Here the substances where they are more here in this, these substances are in the higher concentration, and it can move through the membrane where there is a lower concentration, and till where it will move is till it attains the equilibrium. That is the transport of these are the solute particles. The transport of solute particles from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration till it reaches the equilibrium. Suppose if we keep potassium permanganate crystals in a beaker, after some time the whole solution will become blue. That is here diffusion process is taking place. And diffusion obviously takes place in the gases and liquids, and diffusion of solids also takes place, but it is very low. Now, if we see the factors affecting the rate of diffusion, here temperature, higher the temperature, faster the rate of diffusion. For example, we can smell the food which is cooked in the kitchen, but we can't smell the food which is in the fridge. That is, the higher the temperature, faster the rate of diffusion. And coming to density, higher the density, lower the rate of diffusion. If the density is more, that is, the substances are little bit heavier, then the rate of the diffusion is slow or lower. So that is the higher the density, lower the rate of diffusion. And concentration gradient, higher the concentration, the faster the diffusion. If the concentration is more, then the diffusion is also fast. And here next, surface area of absorption. Greater the surface area of absorption, greater is the diffusion. And if it is the surface area is more, then diffusion is also more. And lipid soluble particles move faster, so diffusion is faster. The particles which are soluble in lipids, the diffusion is also fast. Before knowing about the facilitated diffusion, let us know about what are the porins here. Porins are a kind of protein channels as they are useful to carry the molecules across the cell membrane. There are some substances which cannot pass through the cell membrane. So here proteins help to cross these substances through the cell membrane. These are called as the protein channels or the carrier proteins. What they do, these proteins, they carry the substances which are not passed, which cannot pass through the cell membrane. So these help in passing these substances. So they are called as the protein channels or the carrier proteins. So thus ultimately these are helping in the facilitated diffusion. They form huge pores on the outer membrane. The name itself, porins, means they form pores on the membranes. To carry these substances, these pores have these proteins are having some pores on it. And porins are all usually present in plastids and mitochondria, and also in some bacteria. And not only porins, there are some aquaporins, and they are called as the water channels. Water channels are made up of 8 different type of aquaporins. Now let us know about the facilitated diffusion. After knowing about the porins, you can easily understand the facilitated diffusion. Generally, substances soluble in lipids diffuse faster through the cell membrane, but substances that have the hydrophilic moiety find it difficult to pass through the membrane. Then their movement has to be facilitated. That means some substances cannot pass through the membrane. That is, they are not having the sharing capacity. The hydrophilic moiety is the sharing of the substances, and it is difficult to pass through the membrane. So what is happening? There should be an alternative process, that is the facilitated diffusion. So what are the proteins which are helping in this facilitated diffusion are nothing but the porins. Some special proteins help to move substances across the membrane without utilizing ATP energy. Here no ATP is utilized. So here some membrane proteins provide sites at which such molecules across the membrane, which are known as porins, facilitates the diffusion process, which is known as the facilitated diffusion. That means here in the facilitated diffusion, that means diffusion occurs, that is the passing of the substances occurs with the help of some proteins, and these proteins are nothing but the porins. And here there is no utilizing ATP. Here there is a the diffusion process is a no ATP is required here, so it is a passive process. Next, coming to the directions of the substances, how the there are the 3 types of directions. How these substances pass through the proteins, there are 3 types. They are uniport, antiport, symport. In uniport, when a molecule moves across the membrane independent of other molecules, the process is called uniport. In the uniport, the protein here is carrying one molecule or one substance at a time, and in a one specific direction. So that type of direction is called as the uniport. And coming to antiport, when two types of molecules moves in opposite direction, the process is called as the antiport. Here two substances are there, but at a time the protein will transfer the one substance to other in the opposite manner. Okay, and next coming to the symport. So in this direction, when two types of molecules cross the membrane in the same direction, the process is called as the symport. Here two substances are there, A and B. They can pass through the protein at one time in the same direction. Then that type of direction is called as the symport. In the diagram, you can clearly see the uniport. Only one substance is passing through the protein, and here that is where it is called as a uniport. And in antiport, A is passing through this membrane to this protein, and B from the others from the cell inside, it is coming out from the protein, and this is called as the antiport. And here two substances at a time are passing through the protein. Now let us know what is water potential. The greater the concentration of water in a system, the greater is its kinetic energy or water potential. It is defined as the measure of the relative tendency of water to move from one part to another part is called water potential. Here means the capacity of the water to move is called as the water potential. In other words, I am saying how much the water molecules are there, the more the water can move. The potential is more. That is, it can move from one part to another part. That is what here it is defined. The greater the concentration of water, that means here the more number of water molecules are there. Here, the greater concentration of the water in a system, the greater it is kinetic energy. That is, the movement is more. Here, that is what is called as the water potential. It can also be defined as the tendency of water to move from one part to another part. Okay, and how water potential is generally denoted by the Greek symbol psi. And water will move from the system containing water at high water potential to the one having low water potential. That is, water can move from its higher water potential to its lower water potential. That means where the water molecules are more, it can move from there to the region where the water molecules are less. And here pure water has a high water potential. That means in pure water we are having more number of water molecules. So it is called as it is having a high water potential. And we can measure the maximum water potential of pure water is 0. And the water potential of a solution is less than 0. The solution is why the solution is less than 0 is in the water something else is mixed, that is called as the solution. So that is the reason the water potential is less than 0. And coming to the some other factors which are affecting the water potential, that is the solute potential and the pressure potential. Here solute potential is nothing but when we mix a solute in this water, that is the solvent, the maximum capacity of the dissolution of this solute is nothing but the solute potential. Here we can define it as all the solutions have a lower water potential than pure water. Yes, because the solution is having some solute in that, it is having a lower water potential. The magnitude of this lowering due to the dissolution of a solute is called as the solute potential. The capacity of this solute is the dissolution of this solute in the solvent is nothing but the solute potential, and it is denoted by the psi s. The more the solute potential, the less the water potential. Yes, if the solute is more, the water potential gradually it is lesser. The more the solute potential, the less is the water potential. And so that is the reason it is always negative. The solute potential is always negative. And when in the atmospheric pressure only, the water potential will be equal to the solute potential. Okay, and next coming to the pressure potential. And the pressure built in the plant cell when water enters into the plant cell by diffusion, causing a pressure to build up against the cell wall. Suppose there is a cell in the water, the water continuously enters into that cell. Suppose and what happens in the cell, some pressure is created here, and this pressure is acting against the cell wall. That pressure is nothing but the pressure potential. Again I am reading. Pressure is built in the plant cell when water enters into the plant cell by diffusion, causing a pressure to build up against the cell wall. This makes the cell turgid. That turgid means swelling. The cells are swollen because more amount of water is entering into the cell. Then the cell becomes turgid. The magnitude of increment in the water potential in such turgid cells is called as the pressure potential. Here, the magnitude of increment in the water potential in such turgid cell is called what pressure potential means. If the water potential is more, even the pressure potential is also more. And here it is denoted by psi p, that is it is usually positive, and before solute potential is negative, but pressure potential is always positive. Water potential of a cell is affected by both solute and pressure potential. So now water potential depends on not only on the solute potential, it also depends on the pressure potential, and it is denoted by psi w is equal to psi s plus psi p. Now coming to the next process, that is the osmosis. The diffusion of water across the differentially or a semi-permeable membrane is called osmosis. That is, here this is also same like a diffusion, but here a semi-permeable membrane is present. That means a semi-permeable membrane means it allows only few substances to inside the membrane. It does not allow all the particles to move across the membrane. It selects only some molecules to enter through the membrane. So that is called as the semi-permeable membrane. And such type of diffusion occurring through the semi-permeable membrane is nothing but the osmosis. The diffusion of water across the differentially or semi-permeable membrane is called osmosis. And water here moves from the region of its higher concentration to its lower concentration. That means here if the water is more here and it can move from its higher concentration, means the water molecules are more. So that is the reason it can move through the through its lower concentration. Where the molecules, water molecules are less, it can move easily from its higher concentration to its lower concentration. Or you can say the moving of water molecules are moving off from the solvent from the dilute concentration to its higher concentration. Okay, the movement of water here higher concentration is there, it can move from the dilute concentration to higher concentration. Or you can say either way, that is osmosis can be defined as water moving from the region of its higher concentration to its lower concentration, or the moving of the dilute solution, the moving of the solvent particles from the dilute solution into the concentrated higher concentrated solution. And here the net direction and the rate of osmosis depends on both the pressure gradient and the concentration. Thus osmosis is depends upon the pressure which is created by entering the water into the inside the cell. Then that pressure and also it depends upon the concentration. And most of the water is absorbed by the plants through osmotic mode that occurs due to the concentration gradient. That is, in most of the plant cells, this process is only taking place. That is, the movement of water from cell to cell, the process is through the osmosis. Most of the process is by osmosis. And here no metabolic energy is required, so it is also called as the passive absorption. Here no energy is utilized here, so it is also coming under the passive type of absorption. And here now we will see how the osmosis is taking place in different types of solutions. Here isotonic, hypotonic and hypertonic solutions are there. Isotonic solutions, the solutions means both the in the cell or outside the cell, the solution, there is no osmotic pressure created, that is the concentration is same. So that type of solution is called as the isotonic solutions. If the external solution balances the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm, it is said to be the isotonic solution. Isotonic means both the concentrations are same and there is no osmotic pressure applying here. So if the external solution balances the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm, it is said to be the isotonic solution. And coming to the hypotonic solution, if the external solution is more dilute than the cytoplasm, that is here, if the external solution is here, this solution is very dilute, means more amount of water molecules are there, then the cells in the hypotonic solution, the cell in this hypotonic solution happens to swell, that is, it will increase in its size, and this here endosmosis taking place. That means here the water molecules, if they are more outside, and it is that solution is called as the hypotonic, and here, so as the water molecules are more here, they have a tendency to enter into the cell. They have the tendency to enter into the cell, more water molecules move into that cell, and this cell happens to increase in the size due to more amount of water entering into it. And that is the reason this type of solution which is having more water molecules, or which is in a dilute condition, is called as the hypotonic. And this results in the imbibition. Imbibition means the swelling of the cell membrane. Here cell and the cell or the seed, when it is placed in the water, they swell after some time. If the pea seeds, if they are soaked in the water, after the next day, if we see, the cells will increase in the seeds will increase in the size. Because it is kept in the hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution is nothing but the more amount of water molecules are there. It is a dilute solution. It is called as the hypotonic solution. The absorption of water by seeds and dry wood takes place by the special type of diffusion called as the imbibition. And now coming to the hypotonic solution. Here hypotonic solution means the solution outside the cell will be higher concentration. So here what happens, the water inside the cell if there is any water present inside the cell, it comes out, and that because of this the movement of this higher concentrated solution to its lower concentrated solution, this is the plasmolysis is occurring here. So a hypertonic solution means it is having higher concentrated in its concentration. If the external solution is more concentrated, it is called as the hypertonic solution. And if that cell is placed in a hypertonic solution, the cell gets shrinks, and here exosmosis takes place. That is movement of water coming out. That is called as the exosmosis. And when a cell or tissue is placed in the hypotonic solution, the water moves out of the cell, and the cell membrane, the plant cell shrinks away from its cell wall, and is called as the plasmolysis. And here imbibition can take place, but here in hypertonic, plasmolysis takes place. In the diagram, if you see, the first the cell is a turgid cell, that is water. The cell has having some water here, and incipient plasmolysis is when it is placed in the higher concentrated like hypertonic solution, the water is coming out from the cell. That is the reason the protoplast, whatever the cell contents in the cell, continuously gets shrinked. This shrinkage of this protoplast is nothing but this process is nothing but the plasmolysis. And here, due to the cell wall, but cell wall is not getting shrink because the cell wall is little bit thicker, so it cannot shrink. Only the protoplast get shrink here, and this shrinkage is nothing but the plasmolysis. Now, let us see the differences between the osmosis and the diffusion. Here, diffusion is the movement of solute molecules from a higher concentrated solution to a lower concentrated solution. Here, that in the diagram, if you see, the higher concentrated, the movement of the solute particles from the higher concentration solution to the lower concentration. But here, osmosis means the movement of solvent, that the water molecules from a dilute solution to the higher concentration. And in diffusion, it does not require any membrane, but in osmosis, it requires a semi-permeable membrane. And diffusion occurs mostly in gases and liquids, but in osmosis, it occurs only in the liquid medium. And diffusion of gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen is happening during photosynthesis. But in osmosis, most of the most of the plant cells, the water is passing through the by the process of osmosis only. These are the some differences between the osmosis and diffusion. Mainly, you can say these are the diffusion is the movement of solute particles without any cell membrane, but that is cell membrane is not a compulsory or is not a must. But here osmosis, it requires a semi-permeable membrane. It is the movement of solvent molecules, that is the water molecules. Now we will see how the water is traveled in the root cells. The root cells, the root hair absorbs the water. This water will, how this water will get moved from one cell to other cell. There are two pathways. That those are called as the apoplast and the symplast. Water absorbed by the root hair moves deeper into the root by two distinct pathways known as apoplast and symplast. There are two pathways with which the water can move into the cells of the root. And apoplast means this is the path of the transport of water in a plant without crossing any membrane. That means the water, after entering into the root hair, the water passes into the cells where there is a where there are intercellular spaces. Only through intercellular spaces the water continuously moves, and at last it reaches to the xylem. But here endodermis is there, but it cannot pass through the Casparian thickenings of the endodermis. Just it gets collected over here, and due to the osmosis again it enters into the endodermis cell, and at last it reaches to the xylem. Apoplast means the movement of water passing through the intercellular spaces without crossing any cell membrane. That means it does not enter into any cells. It just passes through the intercellular spaces, and finally it reaches to the xylem. And this process is a very fast and a passive process, because it is no time is required to enter into the intercellular spaces, so it can travel fast. And it is a passive process because it does not require any energy. And coming to the other pathway, the symplast. Here the water moves from one cell to the another cell. That is, here from the epidermis it enters into the cortex cells. From the cortical cells again it enters into the endodermis, and from the endodermis to the pericycle, and from the pericycle it reaches to the xylem. So here it is passing across the cell membrane. The water is passing across the cell membrane from one cell to another cell. Thus, this process is a very slow process, and it is an active process because it has to move against the concentration gradient. Okay, and here you have to remember the pathway means it is water is traveling from the root hair to the epidermis and the cortex cells and the endodermis, and from the endodermis to the pericycle, and from the pericycle it reaches to the xylem. And this is the xylem where this tissue is the main responsible for the translocation of water. So the water is getting collected over in the xylem. The inward movement of the cell is called as the influx, and the outward movement of the water is called as the efflux. There are two types of movements. If the water is entering into the cell, it is called as the influx, and if the water coming out of the cell, it is called as the efflux. So these are the two pathways through which the water is entering into the root cells, apoplast and the symplast. Now let us discuss how the water is getting transported in the plant. Now here, first of all, before going how the water is transported in the plant, let us see the water getting absorbed by the roots, and from the roots again it is supplied through the xylem to different parts of the plant. Like it can the water continuously moves from the root to, and against gravity it travels through the plant, and it is getting supplied to different parts of the plant. Here this is the process going on, and that is the water after traveling into the plant, it finally reaches to the leaves, and more amount of the water, if there is more amount of the water collected, then the water is again escaped into the air through stomata. So this is the process going on in the plant. That is, water is getting absorbed by the root, and from the root it is against gravity, it is traveling upwards and it is transported to different parts of the plant. And finally, if the excess amount of the water is collected in the leaves, it is getting again passed out to the air through the means of stoma in the form of water vapor. Here, suppose if the stoma getting closed, if the stomas are getting closed in the night, during the night time, the stoma gets closed to stop the transpiration, to stop the excess loss of the water. This stoma gets closed in the night. And but here the water absorption, if it is continuously taking place in the ground, the water absorption is continuously taking place by the roots. So here the water is getting absorbed, but here there is no escape of the water. So what happens then? Some pressure is exerted in the root. This pressure is called as the root pressure, which is created in the xylem tissue. Because the water is getting collected in the xylem tissue, it is the continuation of this water makes creates some pressure which is stopping to not to escape from the plant. This pressure exerted in the xylem is nothing but the root pressure. And if you see, if you observe in some plants during the night, if you cut here, more amount of water is coming out from the coming home from the this part of the cutted portion. If this if you cut here, so more amount of water excludes out. That is, here root pressure is such a root pressure, the more amount of water is collected, and it is with this root pressure some amount of water is pushing upwards. That pressure is creating the water to move upwards. That pressure is nothing but the root pressure. Now coming to see the definition. As various ions from the soil are actively transported into the vascular tissue of the roots, water follows its potential gradient and increases the pressure inside the xylem is called as the root pressure. Here various ions from the soil, that is water ions or many, are absorbed by the root, and these are transported into the vascular tissue, that is the xylem. Here the water is getting collected in the xylem. Water flows its follows its potential gradient and increases the pressure inside the xylem. The water enters towards into the xylem by the osmosis, and here some pressure is created because there is no loss of water here, and this pressure inside the xylem is called as the root pressure. And another term we have to know here is the guttation. Not only because of this root pressure, some water is getting escaped from the leaves, that through the some pores called as the hydrothodes, and this water is getting lost in the form of water only, and this loss of water from the plant through the leaves is called as the guttation. I repeat, the water which is escaping from the plant in the form of water droplets through the pores of the leaves. These pores are nothing but the hydrothodes. Okay, this process is called as the guttation. This guttation is due to the root pressure. More amount of water is getting here, the more pressure is occurring in the xylem. So this water is escaping from the leaves through the process of guttation. In the early mornings, if you see, the leaves of some small herbaceous leaves or some small plants like grasses and all, the leaf blades will have some water on the leaf blades. You will find some water on that. This water is coming out from the hydrothodes which are present on the leaves. These are the openings of the veins. Okay. And see the definition. Excess of water exudes in the form of water droplets around the special openings called hydrothodes of veins near the tips of grass blades and the leaves of some herbs. This water loss in the liquid phase is called as the guttation. Guttation means the water loss in the form of a liquid, but in the transpiration the water loss is in the form of vapor. Here the water loss is in the form of liquid, and it is due to the root pressure. This is called as the guttation. Now let us come to the topic how the water is transported up, how the water is moving upwards, that is upward movement of water. The upward movement of water is nothing but the ascent of sap. We can call it as the ascent of sap. Ascent of sap in the xylem tissue of the plants is the upward movement of the water and minerals from the root to the crown. Crown means till the end of the leaf, whatever the tip of the plant is called as a crown, the movement of water through the xylem towards the upward movement of the water through the xylem reaching from the root to the crown is nothing but the ascent of sap. And how this ascent of sap occurs, it is how this upward movement is taking place. It requires three factors like cohesion, adhesion and transpiration pull. And now we will see what is this cohesion, adhesion and transpiration pull. As I said, there are three physical factors which are resulting in the upward movement of the water. They are the cohesion, adhesion and transpiration pull. Now we will see what is the cohesion means. After the water collecting into the xylem, some cohesion and adhesion takes place. With this process, the water is moving from in the xylem. The cohesion means the attraction of similar molecules, similar water molecules. There is a close binding of the water molecules. This binding of or this attraction of the water molecules is called as the cohesion. We can define as a mutual attraction between water molecules. And coming to the adhesion. Adhesion is the attraction of water molecules to the surface of the xylem. Suppose if this is the xylem, this is the wall of the xylem which is made of lignin, and here this water molecules are somewhat, they are getting little bit attracted to the lignin wall, so that it binds over here, and with this leaning, this whole water molecules get pushed upwards. This adhesion means the attraction between the water molecules and to the surface of the xylem is called as the adhesion. Due to this cohesion and adhesion, the water tends to move from upward like this. It moves from like this. It moves in the xylem, upward movement. But actually the upward movement takes place by the transpiration pull. Here first the adhesion means the binding of the water molecules. Water molecules are tightly held, and when the hydrogen bonds are leaned with the, or they are getting attracted with the wall of the xylem, they are getting pushed, like they are getting the small movement is taking place from down to up. This after this happens the transpiration pull. The transpiration pull, before going to the transpiration pull, we will see what is transpiration. We know that after getting the water is transported, at last it reaches to the leaves, and from the leaf cells, the mesophyll cells, then from the mesophyll cells to the epidermal cells, and from the epidermal cells there is a stoma, and from the stoma the water escapes out in the form of water vapor. That is called as the transpiration. This process is continuous during the daytime. This process is called this reads a pull of the water. That is, it is continuously the water is getting pulled from the leaves, because the water is escaping out. There is a force acting on it. This force is acting, this upward force acting on due to the transpiration is nothing but the transpiration pull. The driving force for upward movement of water is called as the transpiration pull. That is, here due to cohesion and adhesion, the water is getting pushed, and due to the pulling of the transpiration, due to the transpiration, some pulling forces have happened here, so the water is getting pulled upwards. That is, the upward movement is taking place here. So the water is continuously moving from the root to the different parts of the plant, and here the water is only moving upwards, not downwards. The xylem tissue, the water flows only towards upwards, that it is a unidirectional. But in case of phloem tissue, it is multidirectional. From the leaves, it can travel to different parts of the plant. And coming to here, the transpiration is the water loss from the plant surface in the form of water vapor is known as the transpiration. The column of water continues to move to fill the space left by the water molecules that were pulled out of the leaves upon evaporation. That means here we can see that because of the transpiration, continuous transpiration only, the water is being pulled up. And in the diagram, if you see the water uptake of the soil, the water is moving from the root hairs to the xylem tissue, and from the xylem tissue through the process of cohesion adhesion in the xylem, it happens to move in the water. It happens to move in the xylem tissue easily, and because of the pull, this water is being collected into the leaves, ultimately to the all the leaves, and from the leaves to the mesophyll cells, from the mesophyll cells to the stoma, the water molecules in the form of water vapor, it will evaporate here. This process is called as the transpiration pull. This due to this transpiration pull only, the continuous flow of water is taking place, and this is nothing but the ascent of sap. Now we will see how the opening and closing of a stomata takes place. Stomata play an important role in the transpiration. Because of stoma only, the rate of transpiration depends. The excess of water vapor is lost through the stoma. The transpiration, during the transpiration, the excess of amount of water which is collected in the xylem, it is escaped through the stoma. If continuously the stoma opens out, the transpiration is continuous, and there is a chance of plant getting wilting. That is, it may die. So that is the reason the stoma should close, and it should stop the process of the transpiration. And how the stoma will close and how it will open, we will see. And also at what time the stoma closes and what time the stoma opens. Here, before going to the opening and closing of the stomata, just we will see the structure of the stoma. In earlier classes, you learned the structure of the stomata. That is, it is having two guard cells, and it is surrounded by the cells called as the subsidiary cells. These are the epidermal cells. Then these two are the guard cells. In the dicots, the shape of the guard cells are the bean-shaped cells, and the surrounding cells of the stoma are called as the subsidiary cells. Here, the stoma cells, the guard cells, the inner lining is a little bit thick walled here, and this shape is in case of the dicots, but in monocots it is a different shape. That is the dumbbell shape. They are called as a dumbbell shape, but here it is called as a kidney shape. And here, what happens? What results? The stoma open. And another thing is stoma. These guard cells contain some chloroplast here. This only the epidermal cells which are having chloroplast is the guard cells. Other epidermal cells will not have chloroplast. Only the stoma will, only the guard cells will have the chloroplast. Here, this guard cells have the capacity during the daytime. What happens? Some water and some ions like potassium, chlorine ions, they continuously flow into the guard cells. This continuous flow of the guard cells, what happens? This cell walls becomes turgid. That is, they get swollen. This happens. This outer layer of this wall gets swollen. So it results in the opening of the stoma. That is, the continuous entering of the water. That is, this is the hypotonic solution, and due to the osmosis, it is continuously entering into the guard cells, and these guard cells becomes turgid. Because these guard cells are becoming turgid, it results in the opening of the stoma, and the excess of water will passes from the stoma, and that is the reason this is happening in the opening of the stoma. And coming to the closing of the stoma, the whatever in the nights, to stop the transpiration, this stoma gets closed. That is, the water gets water and some ions in the present in the guard cells, they come out from the cells, from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. The exosmosis is happening. That is, the ions or whatever in the guard cells, they are pumped out. So that is the reason the guard cells become flaccid. That is, they close the stoma. That is the reason that results in the closing of stoma. And this is the opening of the stoma, and this is the closing of stoma. And here, if you see, the pH of the guard cells increases during daytime, and the potassium and chlorine ions move from the subsidiary cells to the guard cells and make them turgid. This results in the opening of the stoma. And what is about closing of stomata? The pH of the guard cells decreases during the daytime, and the potassium and chlorine ions move from the guard cells to the subcellular cells and make them flaccid. This results in the closing of stomata. So here the pH concentration, the hydrogen ion concentration, if it is increases, it results in opening of the stomata, and if it decreases, the pH decreases, then it results in the closing of stomata. And generally all the stomata are the photoactive stomata. Photoactive stomata means they open during the daytime and close during the night time. But some stomata are called as photoactive stomata. These they open during the night time and remain closed during the daytime. Why they open in the night time and close in the daytime is during the daytime it is very high temperatures in the deserts and all. The daytime the temperature is very high, so excess of loss of water, the transpiration, if the rate of transpiration is very high, the plants gets wilted or it may leads to death, so it may die. That is the reason to avoid the transpiration, during the daytime the stoma gets closed and night time it opens. This type of stomata are called as the photoactive stomata. And for examples, the examples of the photoactive stomata you can see in Cacti and Bryophyllum. We have learned how the water is getting transported from the roots to the different parts of the plant. And now here we will see how the food is getting transported from the leaves to different parts of the plant, because food is prepared in the leaves, and from the leaves the food is prepared and this food is transported to different parts of the plant. That is, the direction will be multi-directional. But in case of water is a unidirectional. That is, it comes from the root and goes into and travels to different parts of the plant, but it does not again travel back, so it is called as a unidirectional. But in case of food transportation, it is multidirectional. That is, from the leaves it can travel to, the food can be transported to flowers, buds, fruits, and also roots here. And for how this food is transported by the phloem, the Munch proposed a hypothesis called as the pressure flow or the mass flow hypothesis. He introduced two terms, that is source and sink. What is source and what is sink? Source, it is a place in the plant body where food materials are prepared. That is, example, leaf. That is, it is a place where in the plant body, that is the leaf, where the food materials are prepared is called as the source. That is, example, leaf. And a sink. Sink means it is a place in the plant body where the food material is stored. That is, food is getting stored in the roots or fruits or buds. That place is called as the sink. The food materials are getting stored here. And here, how the food is transported from the leaves to the sink. That is how this food is transported from the source to sink, we will see. Here, after the food is prepared with the help of water and carbon dioxide. This food is in the form of glucose, which is converted to sucrose. This after the sucrose is formed here in the leaves, this is the if this is the leaf cell, and more amount of sucrose is here, means this is a hypotonic condition is formed here. Due to this hypotonic condition, the water enters from the xylem tissue to the leaf cells. Then some pressure is created here, because due to this osmosis some pressure is created in the cells. Then the cells become turgid, and this starch or this sucrose substance continuously moves to the phloem tissue. Due to the hypotonic condition which is occurred in the leaf cells, the food is transported, the sucrose is transported to the phloem tissue from the companion cells to the sieve tubes in the phloem tissue. Then here some hydrostatic pressure, due to the water pressure and the hydrostatic pressure created here, and also the osmotic pressure, there is a lot of high pressure created here, so the food is getting transported to the lower pressure. Where there is the lower pressure, it is continuously flowing to there. And this hydrostatic pressure is helping the food transport from the high pressure to the low pressure. And at last, when it reaches to the sink cells where there is a hypotonic condition, the sucrose gets collected in the cells of the root or fruits or buds. That's those cells. After the all the sucrose or all the sucrose molecules gets collected, here also again the hypotonic condition occurs. Then the water again moves away from the cells and again it enters into the xylem tissue. So here there is a continuation of the xylem tissue, the continuation of flow of the water which helps in the food transport here. This food transport is mainly due to the pressures and the pressure and the concentration gradient occurring in the cells, that is in the phloem cells. Now see here, it is the place in the plant body where the food materials are stored is called as a sink, and food is prepared in the plant leaves in the form of glucose. This glucose is converted into sucrose. This sucrose is moved into the companion cells. From there they enter into the sieve tubes of phloem by active transport. Thus hypertonic condition in the phloem is established. Water from the adjacent xylem flows or moves or into the phloem by osmosis. Osmotic pressure is built up in the phloem sac and moves to the areas of the lower pressure and finally to the sink. At the sink, the sucrose is converted into starch and it is stored. And where the food is stored finally? In the sink. And the sink may be, it is roots or the tubers or the fruits or the buds. And here now we learned how the food is transported from the leaves to the different parts of the plant. And this completes the chapter transport in plants. Note down the questions, children. These are the multiple choice questions. All these terms we already discussed in the class. The short answer questions you already learned. Differentiate between osmosis and diffusion, and define and explain water potential. Explain the structure and mechanism of opening and closing of stomata. And very short answers: what are the porins? What role do they play in the diffusion? What are apoplast and symplast? And thank you for watching, children.